How to Fight. This is a comedic manhwa which shows the atrocities of what man does or is willing to do for money, power, and status. But it also proves that everyone can change. Maybe not everyone is brave enough or secure enough to change, but everyone can. Your past mistakes don't fully define you. You can move forward, but you must also face those mistakes. Sometimes it's your actions, people, etc. Everyone has a backstory, but it's up to you how you move forward. It's not just how to fight, but also how to change and even how to live. Yu Hoban is the main character. In the beginning, he is weak, bullied, and struggling with the weights of life. But by the end, he has completely changed. He isn't just a good character because of his ability to change, but also his ability to change others, as well as his humility with his strength. He loves money, but also knows the world is more than money, getting a weird motivation from it sometimes. There's also bravery to fight back against those who speak ill of those around him. His very first real motivations to fight and continuing theme were words spoken against his mother, as well as an enduring spirit to not give up despite setbacks. One of my favorite moments is second fight against Paco, where he had this certain bloodlust about him. Paco had his mother shave her head for money. And unlike earlier, where he barely won, this time it is completely one sided on Hoban's end. And you see the anger not just in his face, but also in the destruction of his room for training, all hidden behind a calm face. He fails, but still wants to change. He cries, but still wants to change. He gets angry, but still wants to change. And this reflects onto the people around him. His weakness begins to be something he learns to accept as part of him rather than something to be hated. He gives up because of this many times, but his soul is screaming for improvement. There's one part of the story where he is so scared of being hurt, and he knows he's scared, but instead of backing down, he begins hitting his head. He might fail. He has failed. He might get hurt. He has gotten hurt. He might not win, but he still moves to change, not only for himself, but because there might be others that are still hurting behind those who have caused him pain. He is afraid, but in learning to accept that fear and persevere, he is able to help others with their fears and pain. It's how to fight through fear. This ideal is what keeps Hoban slowly changing, and this change is not something he himself recognizes immediately, but something that is discovered by changing, such as the part where he is beating up common thugs and it is wildly easy for him, or other characters reacting to him, saying he is no longer a normal human. I think this is something we often miss about change, that it isn't something immediately recognizable, but only comes into view once we've done it. Every step is small and goes unnoticed until you look back and realize you are no longer that same person. I want to say, reflect on this yourself. Choose a wide gap of maybe 5 years and ask yourself, who am I no longer? What bad habits have I dropped, among other things? And unlike some of the characters in the story, through his change, Hoban builds a life and friends that won't betray him. He fights thugs and continues to build his YouTube channel on the premise of authenticity. He doesn't fake anything and wants to keep finding new ways to be honest with his viewers. His friends, most of whom were initially his enemies, change because of his impact on them. Jihoku is like Hoban, cowardly but flaunting bravado. And unlike Hoban, at the beginning of the story, he is a bully and is actively taking advantage of that. He is also the start of it all, the very first fight they get into at Hoban's house, which is live stream, ruining his reputation and helping Hoban realize he can fight back. He is forced to become a bottom feeder like Hoban, but also has the idea of creating a YouTube channel where Hoban fights against bullies. It works out, but it doesn't last long when Hoban is stripped down and humiliated in his underwear. But through this happening, Jihyuk learns loyalty and true companionship. As his mother said, thank you for being his friend. It gave him comfort and strength. And so Hoban kept fighting, and Jihyuk kept on filming. If I'm butchering the name, I'm sorry, but the next character is Taehoon Sung. He's a thug, often doing what he wants, but becomes the most loyal friend to Hoban and a key player in the story, initially going around asking for 500 won and just beating up people or their friends for the fun of seeing the hope drain out of their eyes. Hoban's viewers want him to fight Taehoon next. Initially wary, After seeing his friend get beat up and put on a brave act in the hospital only to cry in the next moment, Hoban knows what he has to do and decides to fight. Hoban knows what he has to do and decides to fight Taehoon with his channel on the line. Taehoon loses and is reminded of something that happened in the past. Hoban seeks him out to train for another fight, and Taehoon sees something in his eyes, saying, "You also have the same eyes as then." From here, they only become closer, and Taehoon still values that freedom to soar, but Hoban gives him a better way to use that. And you could call this one small moment, like that flap of a butterfly's wings, which leads to him helping and changing others, like Yeonwoo. Yoonwon-ji, when we are first introduced to Yoonwoo, he is known as the doll. Every moment of his life is perfectly planned out by his father. His YouTube channel is that of studying, and his father basically sold him out to work for XJ so that he could continuously monitor his studying. He is a boy who loves Kyokushin karate, but because his father thinks it would get in the way of studying, he quits, but still deeply yearns for it, but also wants to embody this good son. This is where Taehoon and his regrets come in. He sees the cycle repeating and continuously tries to aggravate Yeonwoo, who is almost always calm and collected, like the doll picture that is painted, until that begins to crack. And Taehoon asks him in a fit of tears, hidden behind happiness, "What do you want to do?" And he responds, "I want to practice karate." The doll is broken. He picks up karate, lives and breathes it, taking every fight as a lesson where his body is nurtured. He loves pushing past his limits, saying once more, taking punches and refining his karate. And after that, he gets the new name, the Madman. He even goes as far to expose his father, but rather than being angry at his son like usual, he's proud of him. His son was never a doll to be controlled, but a human, and he finally recognizes that. Bomi Choi is the love interest of Hoban. We initially know little about her. We know she's interested in Hoban in some way, but why is the question? And then we realize why. We see Bomi in a flashback. She's this kid who wants to hurry up and grow up, acting mature and hating being treated like a kid, until one day she's arguing with her father and a boy puts a booger on her forehead. A girl that wanted to grow up and a boy who had already become an adult. She is angry, thinking he's immature and wanting him to apologize, watching him throughout the day to find a good time to berate him about it. But as she watches him, she learns just how hard he works, multiple jobs, long hours, and not being able to experience what it's like to be a kid. She finally gets the chance to speak with him, and he changes her view, telling her to enjoy the time she has with her father, because it may not last forever. This idea that becoming an adult is not all sunshine and rainbows. And yet through it all, he does it with a smile. And Momi changes her ideal type, and the end line stuck with me. Someone who can smile through it all. It's not that Hoban doesn't have pain, he just doesn't let it consume him. He carries it with him as motivation to make the world around him a better place, rather than fully drowning in everything that's terrible, and that is admirable. Shogun Bike. This is probably one of the most impactful sub-stories for me. Shogun is the president of XJ, a past Yakuza, and someone who gets in Hoban's way when he decides he doesn't want to join XJ and instead fights to expose it. Their story reaches a climax when Shogun no longer has anything to lose after his political career is tanked and he's been betrayed. He goes to beat up and harm members of Yu Hoban Company. He's angry and wants to make this his final stand. But after Hoban's plea, he simply says, "What am I doing to a bunch of kids?" and waits for his arrest, as well as to expose 244. He's stabbed and goes through his backstory with Hoban moments before he dies. Shojun is an amazing judo athlete, and he says this is all he had. His mother was working as a prostitute, and father was nowhere to be seen. Now, he only had his coach to fill this role. When given the opportunity to throw matches, he decides not to give and to keep his authenticity, which does him well. His fame soars, but he couldn't hide his background, and when faced with that decision, he denies it, unlike Hoban who fights for it, abandoning his mother who he sought to take care of. And as to repent for being a bad son, he began to throw matches for money. And eventually not even that was enough. Throwing away his pride was nothing, because the man who he saw as his father, his coach, betrayed him, took all his money and blackmailed his mother. After a fit of rage and then emptiness, he enters the Yakuza life, where he begins to commit all sorts of misdeeds. He was good at it and it made him happy, earning him the nickname the Laughing Oni. Until one day, this leads him to kill his own father, who in this moment, as a sort of way to repent for everything, he says, "I'm sorry, son," in misspelling. After that, Seojun loses his men. All that was left was a void, which he thought could only be filled with money and power. That void led him to a ship and to Jinho Lee, who at first seemed to be his opposite. In this moment, we see how he values people, something along the lines of, "You can't call me Hyung or I won't call you it," because if he does it, it would mean he could completely trust them. Which is why this moment that happens after he tells us with Hoban is so important. Hoban carries his will forward and is the only person allowed to call him Hyung or older brother at the end of his life, because Sojun fully trusted Hoban to carry his will and life's meaning forward in an honest way. You could say Sojun was given many opportunities to change, and that's true, but it also led him to two people that changed his world in such a short span of knowing them, and in that way it was luck, even if he didn't get to see it to the end. There are more characters that change and have an impact, but I won't be talking about them, at least right now. If you want to capture it all, I recommend going to read it for yourself. There's one last paradox in the story. His name is Jinho Lee. He's a psychopath. He doesn't feel empathy, much less see anyone as human. His objective in this life is to reach a point so high to find someone he sees as equal, another human. Everybody else he sees as prey or animals. He doesn't change and continues to search for more power in the darkest of ways, and ultimately, different to Hoban, this life betrays him. He loses to the very animal he had been better at his whole life. Unlike Hoban, who had overcome and struggled to live a good life, when greed was so easy, he sought something else. It was a battle between the righteous and the wicked, but also how one lives. Jinho ultimately drowned in the life he created, and Hoban flourished. Not everyone in life will want to or take the opportunity to change. This is true. But I hope this shows you, and I guess in a way me as well, that although your impact may not be immediate, it doesn't minimize or indicate that you are not changing and possibly changing the people around you. You and I are going to make mistakes. I'm currently making mistakes, but I'm also trying to change. Will that lead to anything meaningful? I'm not sure. But like Hoban, through the fear, through those failures, through those mistakes, I will continue to try to change because I want to build a life that won't betray me. That doesn't mean I'll be perfect or embody these or my other ideals in that manner. But I sure will try one step at a time. Or as Martin Luther King Jr. put it, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Peace out and bye.